This is the Unsure Podcast, the podcast about atheism, religion, and everything in between.
Good morning, Dobre Jutro, and welcome to the Unsure Podcast. Whilst in Montenegro, I decided to indulge my long-held fascination with small religious communities in unexpected places. I'm talking about Muslims in Iceland, Mormons in Hong Kong, Sikhs in Belfast, that sort of thing. I planned a visit to one of only 2 synagogues in a country where Jews account for less than 0.1% of the population. In doing so, I learned about a towering figure in modern Judaism, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, known to many as the Rebbe. Schneerson was the leader of the Chabad-Lubavitch movement. During his life, which ended in 1994, he established a global network of institutions including kindergartens, schools, drug rehabilitation centres, and care homes for the disabled. He also created a vast network of emissaries, known as shluchim, who were sent to communities around the world. Today there are shluchim in 100 countries and 1,000 cities, and the movement is very often the only Jewish presence in the given town. Rabbi Ari Edelkop, whom I'm meeting today, is one of those emissaries. I began by asking him about the tiny Jewish presence in Montenegro. Ari Edelkop, thank you for agreeing to meet with me this morning, and thank you for your very kind welcome to your synagogue.
Thank you for having us on your wonderful podcast, and it's a pleasure meeting you, and very excited to be part of this endeavor. I hope to be able to help, assist, and bring more of goodness and kindness to this endeavor.
So tell me about the Jewish community in Montenegro, and I'd be interested in learning about the history of the Jews in Montenegro. So have there been Jews in Montenegro since the initial Jewish diaspora in the 1st century? Has there been a continuous Jewish community here?
Well, the first trace of Jewish people living in Montenegro brings us back all the way to the Roman era. There's a archaeological site outside of Podgorica. It's called Dukle. There they found traces in the archaeological findings. They found traces there of Jewish people living here all the way back then. But never were there Jewish people living all the time in Montenegro. I mean, in different eras, the Jewish people that lived here, moved here, left, whether it was after the Spanish Inquisition, some Sephardic Jews passed by here, lived here for some time. But I think all along history, there were always some Jewish people living here, but there was never like a established Jewish community of an ancient history, always the same people living here. No.
Okay. So what you're saying is that various times in Montenegro's history, there have been Jewish communities which have settled and others have come in, others have left. So it would be unlikely that a Jewish person living in Montenegro today would be able to trace their roots back to someone who has been here since the Roman era.
Absolutely, exactly. Yeah, that's not possible.
Okay.
Basically, the first time Jewish people, let's say what we know now, that they can trace themselves back, is in times of before the Second World War, time of the Holocaust, and then after the war. When the end of the war, there were 10 times more Jews here. They found shelter here in Montenegro in times of the Holocaust, meaning to say there were local people that saved Jews here at the time of the Holocaust. So some Jews came here, and some of them even stayed here until today, where their great-grandchildren or grandchildren were familiar with them and they're part of our community. That was not too many people. Just the past 15, 20 years, that's when more people came here, moved here, and I would say for the past 10 years, those numbers went up, and that's basically the majority of our people living here are from the past, let's say, 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So people would move here, move out, but they would visit here. They would have a summer home here. But the majority of the people, I would say, moved here the past 10, 15 years.
Okay, and where are they moving from?
Well, I would say most of the Jewish people living here are from the former Soviet Union, from Russia, Ukraine. We have some European Jewish people that came here, American Jews, and also from Israel. To generalize, that's basically the story.
And what is the size of the Jewish community in Montenegro?
I would say around approximately there are 600 people living here, spread around the country.
Yeah. Obviously, compared to the population, it's quite small. So, you are one of the sluchim, or an emissary of the Rabbi Schneerson, the Rebbe. Tell me about your journey and how you ended up in Montenegro.
Okay, so it's a long one. It's a long story. We'll try to make it as short as possible. We are personal emissaries of the Rebbe, of the Lubavitch Rebbe, the grand Jewish leader of our generation, the Moses of our generation, who sent my wife and myself to be his emissaries for the past 25 years. We are honored to be his emissaries. Before we came to Montenegro, we were in Russia for 17 years, served as Jewish leaders and shluchim, the emissaries, his emissaries to the south of Russia. We were in the city called Sochi. After 17 years of being there, we came to Montenegro, started the Jewish active life here. So originally, I'm from the U.S. My wife is from Israel. And yeah, we're living here for 8 years. We have with us together another rabbi, a Rebbitzin Rabbanit, who moved 2.5 years ago, and they're the Jewish leaders in Budva, in the Jewish community in Budva. And so basically that's in short the story. We're the first rabbi or Rabbanit to live here constantly, full-time, and be able to teach and be able to assist, support the local Jewish people. And not only the Jewish people, others as well.
The Rebbe was not a fan of division within Judaism, was he? He seemed to view all Jews as one.
Well, Rabbi Schneerson, who is called the Moses of our generation, didn't like the word branch in Judaism.
Okay.
We have different teachings or different approaches, but there's no division of branches. There's, everybody, has a different way of studying and maybe different customs, but the Rebbe, he was for everybody. The Rebbe, his vision is that every single person, no matter of your walk of life, needs to be doing something for another. His vision is that you need to go out of your comfort zone to assist, to help others. He sent all his students all over the world. So there's 6,000, even more students of his that are all over the world, in all far corners of the world. Every city you would have, in countries you have his students, leading and making a difference in people's life.
Okay, that's interesting because I think most people have perhaps a stereotypical view of Jewish communities being quite insular. And the Rebbe seemed to encourage the creation of all sorts of humanitarian programs, education, medical assistance, drug rehabilitation programs, and so on. What you're saying is that your leader had a very outward-looking approach, and that's the type of approach that you've adopted here in Montenegro.
Yeah. Different sects of Judaism, or different branches of Judaism are just terms to make it easier for people to understand of different, but we look at it as different. Everybody needs to do his best. Everybody has to try being a better person. For a Jewish person to be a better active Jew is his action to act Jewish, to follow the Torah and the commandments. The Rebbe's vision is that every single day needs to become better than yesterday. He is once asked, how can somebody become his disciple, his student, his follower? And the Rebbe said, if your day today is better than yesterday's, then you're my student. So we don't put anybody in any certain box or any certain category. We don't want to do that. We try our best to do as much as possible. And once you take those differences away, you take that categories away, it makes it a lot easier, and you don't have to use these artificial names.
Okay, I was quite interested by the fact that you do lots of kind of social outreach work. You have a food bank here, is that right? And you help people who are living in poverty. So tell us about the work you do to help people within the community. And presumably those services that you offer are not exclusively for Jewish people, but they're for everybody in Montenegro. I'd be interested to hear about those.
Yeah, first of all, I got to emphasize that I think we're not doing enough. I mean, even though we're trying our best, that we have different social, humanitarian programs, but we cannot pat ourselves on the back and say we're doing a lot. We're doing things. I think we're not the only ones doing. A lot of people are doing good things. But part of our faith, and I think in others as well, is charity. Charity is being kind and helping people. Some people need to get a job. Some people need just medications which they cannot get and can't afford or they can't access in this place. So we try to bring that, to them. Some need mental support. So we get trained professionals to help them. It's difficult to afford professional help. In a country like Montenegro, not everybody is able to access professional good support. So we try to help in these matters. Obviously, food programs, we would send food to people that cannot afford. When there are certain situations that happen, if it's a fire that burned down people's homes or people which lost their lodging or source of income, we come in, try to have an SOS kind of project. But again, first of all, hope we don't have to help anybody, that God provides everybody. They don't need to be dependent on us. But if we need to do something, we have to do it. We cannot say, somebody else will do. We have to do our best. We can definitely do more than what we're doing. That's something for sure. And yes, and it's not only for our Jewish people in our community. We look around and we need to find those people. There's no difference of what religion they are or their faith is. That doesn't make any difference.
So if I came to your synagogue and said something like, I'm not Jewish, but I can't afford food, I'm very hungry, Rabbi, can you help me out? What would be your response to something like that?
I think that first of all, and this is a message I would like to say to anybody in this field of helping people, you got to make sure when you're helping people to make them feel good, not to make them feel like they are in need or as if they are less worthy than you. That's something which is very important. When you're helping somebody, you got to do it with your whole heart, not to make them feel like they're less worthy in any way or form. If you want to help, do it with all your heart. And another thing I want to add, which is very important. Usually when you help people, it's not easy. It has a price. You don't get feedback. Sometimes you don't get a thank you. You don't expect a thank you. We need to make an extra effort to be nice and not to judge. And importantly, to know it's not easy. It's not easy to help people.
I just want to change topic for a moment because I'm conscious of the limited time that we've got together this morning. And I just want to talk about the issue of anti-Semitism. And I'm wondering whether from your perspective that you've noticed a rise in this in recent years. What do you think is driving it?
Yes, there is a rise of anti-Semitism lately. After October 7th, we've seen something which is against all logic. We Jewish people were attacked brutally like never before since the time of the Holocaust. And the reaction to that, there's attacks on Jewish people around the world. There's a rise of anti-Semitism in many countries. And we have a lot of radical, fanatical people who are calling for the extermination of the Jewish people, which nobody would think that in 2025, people have access to all information around the world, and we're not living in some village somewhere being influenced by some person, but people are very advanced and modern, and they can actually do their homework and learn and study and not listen to propaganda or some fake accusations. And it's very surprising. It's very puzzling that is happening today in many places, that people are being fed hatred, lies, A lot of media outlets are poisoning people's minds. That is very, very surprising. And yes, it's a big test for all of humanity. It's not only something to do with the Jewish people. I think it's a big test for humanity. Terrorism today is everywhere. You don't have to live in Israel to be a victim of this ideology of it's either my way or no way. And I will kill you if you don't believe what I believe. That is horrible. That has nothing to do with any faith or any God or any religion. If I'm spiritual or I'm a believer, that means I need to respect you or respect everybody that was created in the image of God. No matter of what religion you are, no matter what church or mosque or this is what humanity is about. This is our fundamental beliefs of every person. So that is a big challenge. Many people in the world are being influenced by these media news, which are funded by different corporations and different ideologies that want people to hear a certain message. That is, a challenge we're going through the past 20 months in the world, and Jewish people are becoming a victim again.
Has there been any instances of that in Montenegro?
Well, yes.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes. Even though I would say Montenegro is actually one of the better locations where people here are very accepting of one another, a lot of respect, and not only nothing to do with Jews or non-Jews, but the people here are very nice, respectful. But I think lately we've seen a lot of aggressive and a lot of biased news. The media outlets are showing a lot of hatred, a lot of lies, translating different articles from other European or Al Jazeera, and they're bringing this poison to a place like Montenegro, and people watching this television really believe what they're reading and they think that that is the truth. I think the government of Montenegro is not doing enough to stop racist or hate talk on social media, and I voiced my opinion about that. Not only towards Jewish people when we see that, but also towards other people. And I think that is something which you cannot allow. You can have a difference of opinion, you can think differently, but you cannot use hate speech or you cannot be aggressive, because words eventually bring to action.
Absolutely. Now, the Rebbe was a particularly strong advocate for the territorial integrity of the State of Israel. All this talk about misinformation and media influence, you're obviously referring to the situation in Israel and Gaza.
Absolutely. People don't know where Israel is on the map when you ask them, but they have an idea and they know what is going on in Gaza. And that's something which is really disturbing. And what is disturbing is that many people, when they see that and they see people aggressively responding on social media and using very, very brutal language, other people are quiet about it. That's something which disturbs me.
You said in the conversation prior to me starting this interview that you don't discuss politics, but could you tell me your take on the situation in Israel and Gaza? What's your perspective on matters there?
I think Israel today is fighting a war for all of humanity. They are surrounded by terrorist organizations from all over, from all sides. They have countries which have no border with them, like Iran, Yemen, and other countries which are funding terrorism around the world. I think people even in the UK and the US are suffering from these terrorist organizations. And this tiny piece of land, a biblical homeland for the Jewish people, which Jewish people have been living there for thousands of years, all the time, sometimes less, sometimes more, but there's always Jewish people there for thousands of years. It's 4,000 years since the times of Abraham. We have traces all along history. We know exactly who lived in what time, or what place, and what piece of land. Everything is proven not only historically in the Holy Scriptures or in historical books, but archaeologically. You open the Bible or Torah everywhere, even in Muslim scripture, in the whole land of Israel, you can prove and trace everything that it says. It clearly states who the land belongs to and what happened in this land. And this is history 4,000 years, all the way from Abraham to the times of King David, King Solomon, and onwards. If you've been to Israel, you can just take a map Take the Bible and just go in and you'll see exactly what is written there, every single place. And all along the years, Jewish people living there, in all empires, all foreign governments that lived there. And until this day, and all around us, we have people and ideologies which are not seeking peace. The Jewish people, they always want peace. They always never start of wars in history. They always want peace. And Israel, being the only democratic country in the region, has people from all walks of life, all religions, comfortably living and have full rights like of any person. These rights are not given to any of these countries around. If a person believes a different belief or has a different religion or even has a different walk of life, he cannot safely, comfortably live in any of the countries. He will be either murdered or put to jail, and not so in Israel. And in Israel, the prime minister can be an Arab. This is the only place. And this attack today that Israel is going through, not only today, it's not a territory conflict. This is an ideology that they want to wipe out the Jewish people, to murder them, to make sure there's no Jewish people. This is not today when you say I'm anti-Israel, it means I'm anti-Jewish. That's what they're saying, from the river to the sea. They don't recognize the existence of the Jewish people or the land of Israel, or the whole land of Israel. That is the problem that we're dealing with.
I agree with your point when you talked about Israel being a democracy and an Arab can be prime minister potentially. And I think a case can be made that despite Israel's detractors referring to almost like an apartheid system being in existence in Israel, that historically, and at least during times of peace, that the life of an Arab living in Tel Aviv, for example, is going to be a lot better than, for example, a Jewish person living in Saudi Arabia or some other Islamic theocracy.
I think that most Arabs living in Israel today are doing very well. Not only that, if you ask any of them, would you like to live in any Arab country around, or would you want Israel to leave, not to be there? They will tell you no. They're scared. They want to be with the Jewish people side by side, living under Israeli government. This is something which you can actually research. And we're not talking about terrorist organizations, which are, brainwashing the children. We're making them fanatics and promising them a certain prize after you blow yourself up. If you are a jihadist and you kill other people, you promise some kind of prizes up there in heaven for killing people. This is not a joke. This is happening. That is something we cannot tolerate. The world cannot tolerate that. When mothers are saying we're giving birth to children for them to die as martyrs, that's something which is not part of any ideology. And this is not only happening around Israel. This is happening around the world in many places.
Yeah.
I have many friends which are Muslim. And, we're not talking about that. We're talking about people who are poisoned with dangerous ideology, that life has no worth, life has no value. And it's, I'm ready to kill myself and my children in order to cause harm to people around me.
I mean, most people's criticism of Israel since October 7th is the claim that their response to these terrorist organizations has been disproportionate. It's been overblown. It's been too extreme. Would that be something that you would agree with?
Well, what is a proportional response? Let's say we live in Liverpool.
Yeah.
And there's somebody, 8,000 armed young men and children one morning come to Liverpool with jeeps, and they, God forbid, I'm just bringing this question.
Yeah.
And they murder people in Liverpool, and they will rape the women, children, behead babies in front of their parents, have their parents sit on a couch and put their children in their own kitchen ovens, force them watch how they die, and then kidnap another 1,300 people and take them back into their holes. What kind of proportional response would you?
Well, I don't know. It's a hypothetical situation, isn't it? And one that I'll never be in, but I need to hasten to add that I don't necessarily agree with that view. And, maybe I'm a victim of subjective news reporting and propaganda.
But you know what the proportional response of the world would be?
What's that?
In usual cases?
Yeah.
In history?
Mm-hmm.
Well, anybody who knows history would know what they would do, the Western world, they would bomb the whole country where that came from and use nuclear weapons. That was the proportional response that the Western world, even the UK in World War II, what they did to Germany and so on and so forth. What we see in Israel is actually very moderate. I think even way too moderate. It's telling the peaceful civilians, please leave a certain neighborhood because we're going to bomb, because underground they sent a message to prepare those buildings, those areas which they're going to bomb. They don't bomb spontaneously and tell, please leave those places because we're going to send. Why? Because underground or this or in that building or that school or that mosque, we're going to bomb it because these Hamas or terrorists are hiding there and they are keeping their weapons there. So we're going to bomb them. They tell them before. Always the Israeli approach to try not to get any innocent lives involved. This is the only army in the world, by the way, that does that. Again, I want to repeat that. This is the only army in the world that has the moral compass of not hitting civilians, but rather these terrorists to get them out, but not those civilians, because we treasure life. These people, actually, these terrorists are not treasuring life. They're not respecting life. What they do is they actually kill their own people. This is a fact. They kill their own people. All the biggest bases of these terrorist organizations, you know where they're built? They're not built in regular places. They're built under hospitals. They choose hospitals, choose their mosques to build these bases under these places, under schools. What they do is they hide behind innocent civilians. And that is something which the world is closing their eyes about. But it's okay, because we're used to that. Historically, Jewish people are used to the fact that when Jewish people are being attacked, we're being blamed for that. It's okay. We're used to that. We've been around. Every person smart in history knows the history of the Jewish people. We always, in the end, prevail. God has a plan for us. We're here for thousands of years. We know exactly our Torah and our way of life. Some people coming along history that want to wipe us out. We're quiet when those things happen. So we're not scared. We're not worried. We just know what we got to do.
Okay, we'll move on again. And I wanted to talk about the Torah. Now, a very common source of discussion on my podcast over the course of the past 18 months or so has been the historicity of the events described therein. The 6 days of creation, the Exodus, and so on and so forth. There was a discussion recently with regards to whether the story of Noah's Ark is rooted in historical reality. So, what's your perspective on these matters? Did the events described in the Torah actually happen?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. First of all, for us, the Jewish people, the Torah is not a history book. It's very important to mention that. It's an instruction for life. It's a guidebook for how the person should live. And it's a blueprint of the creation of the world. So, yes, the Torah has historical facts, but it's not a historical book. Yes, we received the Torah by Mount Sinai, the Jewish people, millions of Jewish people standing by the mountain. We know the exact date, the exact time, the exact people, the exact location, and exact Torah of what we received. And I find that fascinating, that the Torahs that we have here in our synagogue is the exact same Torah. It's those exact same words, the exact same letters that all the Torahs around the world for thousands of years, no change. If one letter is missing of that Torah, then it's not a kosher, usable Torah. So I find that fascinating.
Okay, I'm not sure you've answered my question fully. I mean, did the story of Noah's Ark happen, for example?
Everything which is said in Torah is literally true. For us Jewish people, the Torah was given to us by God, to the Jewish people as inheritance and a gift and a way of life. We use the Torah as well as some historical facts for us to know and to learn, but not as a book of history, but as a instruction how we should act today. These stories of the Bible are for us to live by them, to act by them. Those stories empower us how we should act today in our daily life.
So if I was to pick out something from the Torah, like Noah's Ark, for example, which we had a discussion about on a previous episode, did that happen as the book of Genesis said it happened?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. In the Torah, we have 4 levels of learning the Torah. There's the simple understanding of the Torah, the actual episode of what the Torah is teaching us. If it's a story, that story happened. Nothing in the Torah, according to our faith, which is our Torah, okay, is something that didn't happen. There is always a mystical, a deeper, a bigger message and picture of those stories into our lives, more than just the story of what happened. But if you say something in the Torah did not happen, then you don't believe in the Torah.
Now, I end my podcast by asking guests how they think my listeners should live their lives. Last week, I had a Satanist who said, realize that we've got limited time, go out and enjoy yourselves, essentially. So what is your perspective on this question? How should my listeners live their lives?
We have 613 commandments in the Torah. And then we have 7 Noahide Laws. I don't know if you ever heard of these. Noahide Laws, you mentioned Noah just before, are laws for all mankind. The Rebbe, our Moses of our generation, said that if everybody would do these 7 Noahide Laws, this world would be a much better place. The world would be fit and ready for the ultimate redemption that we're all waiting for. The Rebbe said it brings the humanity to live together in harmony. The first one is to not profane God's oneness in any way, which means we need to acknowledge there's a single God that cares about what we're doing, knows what each of us is doing, and he desires that we take care of his world. That's the first one. The second one is do not curse your creator. No matter how angry you may be, do not take it out verbally against your creator. Third is do not murder. Value of human life cannot be measured. No one gave you the right to destroy the world. Is sustaining a single human life. You're sustaining an entire universe. Fourth, do not eat a limb or a still living animal. Respect the life of all God's creatures. As intelligent beings, as human beings, we have a duty not to cause undue pain to other creatures. 5, do not steal. Whatever benefits you receive in this world, make sure that none of them are at the unfair expense of someone else. 5, harness and channel the human libido. Incest, adultery, homosexual relations are forbidden. The family unit is the foundation of human society. Sexuality is the fountain of life, and so nothing is more holy than the sexual act. So, when abused, nothing can be more debasing and destructive to the human being. 7, establish courts of law and ensure justice in our world. With every small act of justice, we're restoring harmony to our world, synchronizing it with the supernal order. That is why we must keep the laws established by our government for the country's stability and harmony. You don't have to be part of any church or any religion or any nation to be considered a godly person to keep these laws. You don't have to go anywhere or do anything. This is the laws that God gave us before the Jewish people came about. Noah wasn't Jewish. Only Abraham was the first Jew. So these are laws for all humankind. The Rebbe said that when people bring these laws to their lives, and I know many non-Jewish people, friends that do these laws, they are so happy. They find harmony in lives. They find love in their lives. Especially today, we see that these laws are so important because people, everybody can do whatever they want, but it's a jungle.
So that's your blueprint for the improvements of humanity.
That's not mine. That's not mine. I'm a simple person. It's the Torah's. We believe in the Bible and the Torah. This is what it is. This is what it is. At least when you go by these laws, you'll have a happy life. By the way, the law is not easy. You just take one as not stealing, right? People can say, I don't steal, but from that place, organization, or person, I gotta steal because I need to. Because people tend to justify their actions by, that's okay because I can murder somebody because he doesn't believe like I believe, or he's useless.
The end justifies the means.
Exactly.
Thing.
And that's what these come about. Adultery or our intimate lives or our sexuality being an holy thing. People in the world look at it as not a holy thing. It's like a certain animal instinct need that we do. If you just do whatever you want to do, whatever, you feel like, these are not easy ones. It's not easy ones.
So it's almost like you're saying that the Torah has supremacy over mere pronouncements by men.
Absolutely. We don't look as our faith as a religion. I don't know if you're aware of that. We don't believe in the word religion. In the Torah, it doesn't say anywhere the word religion or religious.
I guess what you're saying is Judaism and encodes.
It's a way of life.
Yeah, encodes God's laws for the whole of humanity.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a way of life. It's just a way of living. It's a way of acting. Each one of us needs to breathe light, goodness, kindness. That's our job.
Ari Edelkop, thanks for speaking to me this morning.
Thank you. I was honored. I really enjoyed it, and I think you're doing a wonderful thing by bringing people together, by bringing knowledge to people. I really hope I did something good with this.
You absolutely did. Thank you.
Thank you.
All the very best to you and your congregation. Bye-bye. Thanks again for joining me this morning on the Unsure podcast. A few thoughts to leave you with following my conversation with Rabbi Edelkop. I'll deliberately steer clear of the politically charged topic of Israel and Gaza. The Torah has long been regarded by the Jewish people as a text containing historical truths. For over 2,000 years, they've been devoted custodians of its content. So, it raises a question. When modern-day liberal Christians interpret stories of exoduses, floods, and talking snakes as purely allegorical or poetic, does this run contrary to the original intent of the early biblical writers? Could it be the fundamentalists are actually closer in spirit to how the earliest authors of the Old Testament saw their work? That said, it's also worth noting the irony that many Christian fundamentalists, while strict on issues like homosexuality through the lens of certain Old Testament verses, seem to overlook or disregard many of the hundreds of the Torah's other commandments. Rabbi Edelkop is one of many I've met in recent years who are wary of the word religion, often seeing it as something man-made or artificial. Instead, they emphasize a direct relationship with God, Scripture as divine revelation as opposed to human construct. What stood out to me the most was how seriously Rabbi Edelkop and his community take the Torah's calls for charity and honesty. There was no cherry-picking and no selective morality, and his commitment to social justice and the work he's doing in Montenegro deserve recognition and respect. Thanks once again for listening in to the Unsure podcast. Until next time, love your neighbour as yourself. Shalom.
You've been listening to the Unsure podcast, produced and presented by Robert Shaw. This week's episode featured Rabbi Ari Edelkop, Chief Rabbi of Montenegro.